sent me. Twins of evil. Take her to the jail.
Good evening, my fellow vampire lovers. The sun is going down, and you know what that means. It's time for me to record another episode of my podcast, The Beautiful Dead. As always, I'm your host, Lena Nazari. You can go to lenanazari.com if you want to join my Fanged family or see where I'm going to be. I just got back from Fan Expo Philly, so thank you for everybody who came out to see me, buy my books, see my panel, all that cool stuff. You can also go to Instagram, which is The Beautiful Dead Podcast, and you can DM me there, or you can put comments on the video, or send me emails, whatever. Lena@lenanazari.com is how you can send me emails. I know. I need to get this book written. I know. I promise. I'm doing as much as I can. May is very, very busy. I have Fan Expo. I have a kid graduating high school. So it's a little bit busy, but I promise the goal now is to get the book out by spooky season. My goal is my birthday, which is the end of September. So make sure you're following me on all the things to find out. Okay, so we're ending May. We had our whole theme, which was identical ancestors, identical relatives. This one has twins. We started with Sinners, which has twins, but then we had identical ancestors. And so that is our theme. So we're wrapping this one up. And the way that I stumbled across this is I was watching a vampire movie on Prime, and the movie ended. And as I was writing my notes out, this one auto-played. And it started immediately. I saw Peter Cushing and I was like, what is this? And so I looked it up, and it was a vampire film, and I saw it through and wrote it all out, and it was perfect for our theme. So we are talking about Twins of Evil. Now, if you have never watched this channel or listened to this podcast, massive spoiler alert, I do ruin everything. I talk about it from beginning to end, because the whole point of this podcast is to break down the vampires of this universe, kind of talk about their rules, how they work, their powers, all that good stuff. So I am going to ruin it. So consider yourself warned. Let's go ahead and talk about it. Twins of Evil. So we open on a group of men on horseback, and they ride up to a cabin that has what looks like a man and his daughter. I think they're father and daughter. The daughter is, I would say, 18, maybe 20. The men break in, pull the woman out, tie her to a stake, and the leader, played by Mr. Peter Cushing, who we know, of course, he played Van Helsing to Christopher Lee's Dracula I don't know how many times. He prays that God will have mercy on her soul. Then they light the pyre. She screams. The crowd cheers, and we get our opening credits. 30 seconds in, they've burned a witch who was not a witch. It was just a girl. All right. So after our credits, it's a beautiful sunny day, and a carriage stops and shows us twin girls looking out the window up at a castle on a hill. They remark that's a beautiful castle, and they ask the other people in the carriage who owns the castle. And they say that's Karnstein Castle. And I know from Vampire Lovers the name Karnstein, and I was like, oh, we must be back in the world of Carmilla. So, vampire pause. At this point in time, I paused it, I pulled up my phone, and I looked to see, and yes, this movie is part of a trilogy. So it was Vampire Lovers, which we've already done, Lust for a Vampire, and then this one. You do not need to watch them in order. It's just the same universe. But I do want to make sure that I do all three. So next week, we're going to do Lust for a Vampire. Heads up. And then we can complete the trilogy. So write that down. All right. We find out that the girls came from Venice, and they are Maria and Frida. They arrive in a village and are greeted by their Aunt Kathy, who they have not seen since they were very, very little. Kathy tells them, please go to your room and change before your uncle arrives. Kathy explains, in this village, you should already be wearing black. They say, well, we wore black for 2 months and we don't think we need to anymore, but they do agree to put on something more somber. But before they can, their uncle Gustav, Peter Cushing, who was burning the witch in the beginning, arrives, and he's very upset that they are disrespecting their dead parents by wearing these ostentatious outfits. So I guess he thinks they should still be in mourning. They should be dressed in black. They should not be looking happy or pretty. he leaves for a meeting of the Brotherhood, and we see that this was the group of men who were on horseback that burned our young lady in the beginning. Gustav is in charge, and he's screaming about how men have died recently with the mark of the devil, and they believe they need to find the evil women who are behind this. One man speaks up and he's like, I know of a woman. She lives in a cottage in the woods and refuses to be married. She must be a creature of the devil. And the men get all fired up and they start screaming, burn her. Gustav gives a yes nod, and then they all leave. Meanwhile, the twins are talking in their bedroom about how they cannot stay with this uncle. He's too mean. But Maria is like obviously the good twin because she says, we just need to stay. We just need to be good. But Frida says, I will find a way to get out of here. And clearly she is the naughty twin. The Brotherhood breaks into a woman's cabin in the woods and finds her in bed with a man. The man that she's with is not having this, and he jumps up and confronts Gustav and says, you get your kicks out of killing innocent girls. Gustav says, you may have protect from the court, Count Karnstein. So now we know who this is. But God will have his revenge in the end. The Count is amused by Gustav's zealousy and tells the woman not to worry about the men, and then he sends Gustav out into the woods. But he follows and goes out and follows them and sees the Brotherhood all out there with their torches. He grabs the girl, who he calls Gerda, and says, fine, take her, and throws her onto the ground in the midst of the men. Take her if you need some amusement. I was like, ooh, I don't like this guy. For a second, I was like, oh, you're kind of good looking. You look kind of cool. I like your vibe. Never mind, he's a giant dick. Gustav approaches this woman and he pulls out a gun and he aims it at Karnstein. But this large man steps in between Karnstein and Gustav. And we find out his name is Joachim. And that must be like our Renfield, is what I'm thinking. As the Brotherhood leaves, they pass a cemetery and they hear like wheezing in the cemetery. So they find a man who's dying, he's drained of blood, and he has fang marks on his neck. And they conclude it must be Gerda because she lives nearby. So they're riding through the forest and they find this poor blonde woman just walking down the middle of the forest with like a bag of flowers in her hand. And they're like, that must be her. She's fleeing the scene of the crime. And they chase her down, grab her. It's not even the same blonde that was with the Count. So I guess they're just grabbing any woman who's nearby. And they take her, tie her up, and light her on fire. She was just at the wrong place at the wrong time and happened to be female. Back at home, Gustav is ranting about wickedness and the way that the aristocrats sin and they have orgies and they worship the black arts. And honestly, I'm like, okay, how do I get invited to one of those parties? But the twins are listening, and Frida is very intrigued, and she thinks that she wants to make her way to the castle because it sounds like fun. So she goes to the window and she looks up longingly at it, but Maria is like, please go to bed, please be good. So now we see Karnstein in his castle, and there's a naked woman who's tied to this like big marble slab, and she's naked, and there's all these hooded men all around her, and they're like chanting in Latin, and they pour blood on the woman as the Count watches, and I'm like, oh, maybe they do actually do like black magic. The Count is watching it, and we find out from his man who's next to him, his like second hand, that is his entertainment for the night. He's like, aren't you entertained? And the Count looks so bored. And they have filled this bowl full of blood, but it's animal blood, and he's not interested. And they ask him if he's happy with the girl, and he's like, no, it's a peasant. I bought her for a few coins. This is really boring. I want something more exciting. So then he says, Gustav has pretty twin nieces. I want them. And this servant who arranged the entertainment for the night is like, please do not mess with Gustav. Please don't bring trouble to the castle. The servant tries to convince the Count that the man leading the chant is actually possessed by the devil, that they've conjured up Satan himself. But the Count walks up, pushes the man aside, calls them all out for being fake Satanists, and tells them they're not even good con men. They're not even selling it. And he says, leave me alone with the girl. And then he rants about how his ancestors were true devil worshippers, that they actually were rewarded by Satan with magic and power, and he wants to be more like them. So he picks up the dagger from the ritual and he holds it over the girl. And he calls out to the Lord of Darkness and asks for the power to basically stop being bored. And then he offers this woman as a sacrifice. He stabs her and he calls out to Satan as blood runs off her, off the slab, and into a crack. And we realize that the platform is actually the top of a tomb. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I realize he's not a vampire. He's just like a bored, spoiled, rotten rich boy. And I'm hoping he's about to wake up Carmela, or Miracala, that's what they called her in Vampire Lovers. So as the Count like goes and mopes and feels bad for himself because he's rich and he's handsome and it's so boring, this storm hits, the candles are blown out, and we see the blood roll down into the tomb onto this like shrouded figure. And that figure, the spirit sort of rises up through the girl and stands next to her as like a big, totally shrouded figure and walks towards him. And the Count looks like he's probably peed himself. But this beautiful female hand reaches up out of the shroud and touches his cheek. And we see it is Miracala, just as I suspected would be happening. Meanwhile, Frida is still watching the castle when Maria wakes up and is basically like, hey, crazy twin, why are you still staring out the window at that castle? Now we're back with our bad guys. The Count kisses Miracala and asks if the devil sent her, and she said yes, that he, the Count, will now remain on earth, that the devil has accepted his offering and will take his soul, and he is now undead, which they celebrate by having sex, which I'm pretty sure is how all devil deals are sealed, right? Pretty sure. Then we see, as they pull back from the action, we see like a statue in honor of Miracala Karnstein. So I'm like, oh, you're related. But it says that she died in 1570 or 1547. And I'm thinking because of the way they're dressed and everything, like pilgrims and whatnot, that it's like the late 18th century. I'd say like end of the 1700s. So there's like 250 years between them. I don't know. Does that make it okay? You guys tell me. What do you think? I mean, it is a vampire universe. And these are the kind of things that you need to know if you're going to live forever. I am in sort of Maharat's level of thinking. If you know the Vampire Chronicles, you know, Maharat, she watched her line from afar, and that was always her line. And she was there to protect her line, not sleep with it. But you give me your thoughts. I don't know. This is not a morality podcast. This is a vampire podcast. So if you've been alive for 250 years and you find your descendant, your great, whatever, is it okay? You tell me. All right. Miracala shows him that she doesn't cast a reflection, but he does. So he's a little confused. But then she bites him, and then his reflection fades. So the turn is extremely quick. Then why didn't the guy in the cemetery turn? And who bit him if the Count was never a vampire? Questions. Okay. So I'm thinking like, oh, is he the only one turning because the devil sent Miracala specifically to turn him? So maybe you can only turn somebody like if the devil allows it. This is where my thoughts were. I promise we will find out that answer. Anywho, it's daylight. The twins are outside with their aunt and they see men hunting and killing a boar. Maria does not like it, but Frida is unfazed, which tells us yet again, Frida is the crazy twin. Maria is sort of the virginal twin, the sweet one. The twins arrive to their new school and they're introduced to Ingrid, who runs the school, And then her brother arrives from the hunt, and his name is Anton, and he is very handsome, and he's immediately smitten with Frida. Questions for my twins. Do you guys dress in the same outfit? Because I see this in movies all the time. But I feel like actual identical twins, probably not dressing the same. I could see for like a special occasion maybe. But do you guys dress the same? Because these girls always dress exactly the same in this movie. Anyhow, Frida tells Anton that the village loves to hunt boars in the morning and witches at night. And he's like, oh no, do not mix me in with your crazy uncle. I do not go out and kill women. I don't believe in that nonsense. And I hate that this village is so superstitious. Anton says, your uncle may be misguided, but he is a good man. And Frida goes, maybe I don't like good men. Girl. Ingrid calls Anton over and says that Maria has been asking about the history of the Karnsteins, and he gives her a book to read. And while they're distracted, we see Karnstein arrives in a carriage, and he's in the sun, so we know they can be in the sun. He sees Frida outside and is like, oh, I want that. Gustav comes up, and he sees the Count talking to Frida, and he is pissed. He sends her inside, and he tells the Count, I will be telling my nieces never to speak to you again. And the Count looks away like, bet.
Both my nieces will be instructed never to speak to you again.
Watch me. That night, the girls are in their nightgowns. Frida is planning to sneak out and tells Maria to go to bed and mind her own business. Maria says, please do not go. The Count is a wicked man. Frida's like, if you tell Uncle, and then she wraps her throat wraps her hands around her sister's throat, pushes Maria down and says, don't wait up for me. And it's basically implied that Frida has hurt her sister before in the past. Frida is in the woods, and I want her dress. I need that dress. She makes it to the castle and is having dinner with the Count, Gerda, and Count's sort of right-hand man, the one that arranged the black arts for him. The Count asks Gerda what she thinks of Frida, and Gerda's like, I mean, she's all right. And the Count is not happy about her rudeness. And he says, we need to teach you a lesson. And then he asks Frida's opinion, and she's like, yep. So he says, okay, we will punish Gerda together. Gerda tries to run, but Joachim grabs her and carries her to places unknown. The Count takes Frida's hand and says to his man, we're going to go play with Gerda. Now they're in a torture room, because I guess castles have torture rooms. Gerda is chained to a wall. There's flames and cauldrons all around, and there's an upside-down cross. He says to Frida, you should know extreme pleasure, and a great pleasure is to take someone's life. But it comes with a price. Will you pay it? And Frida says, anything. So he leads her to the mirror to see that he has no reflection. And he says, we are undead. Only a stake to the heart or beheading will kill us, and only a cross will stop us. Finally, at 43 minutes and 31 seconds, we get the word vampire. She said,
We are the undead, immortal. No man can harm us unless he bores a stake through our hearts or beheads us. No one is protected from us unless they hold the hated cross.
You're a vampire.
Yes.
This is when we learn, this is very specific.
It is a test. One who is dedicated to the devil and his deeds will not die by a vampire's bite, but will become one of the undead.
You gotta hand it to him. That's a creative way to explain why some turn and some don't. So we find out, if I'm a vampire and I bite you, and you are fully evil or fully dedicated to the devil, then you turn into a vampire. But if you are innocent or righteous, then you die. And that's how the turn works. So then his fangs descend, and he bites her, and he has two sharp fangs. And as he does this, Maria wakes up in her bed, and she grabs her throat. So we know that they have some kind of twin connection. Frida doesn't die, but instead turns to the mirror, and she has fangs. And then the reflection fades, and now it's torture time. and Gerda knows it. The vampires approach, and Frida feeds from the poor woman's boob, which I've told you guys before, you're not going to get much out of the boob. It's very sexy, but you're just not going to get a lot of blood there. So now it's morning, and the Brotherhood is burning another witch at the stake. Morning. Burning women flesh. Anton is talking to his sister, and he's so pissed that the Brotherhood have now killed 3 innocent women. She changes the subject and asks why Anton's into Frida when Maria is so much nicer and they look exactly the same. He explains that Frida has a fire in her and she feels mysterious because I guess he likes those bad girls. His sister cautions him, please do not offend Gustav if you want to court his niece. Frida climbs back into her bedroom window as Gustav and the Brotherhood return. Maria says, please don't do that again. And she explains that Gustav came up and she had to pretend to be her sister to protect her. That's when we learn it's actually been a few nights since Frida was turned, and she's been sneaking out every single night. Back at the school, Anton is composing a harpsichord piece when Gustav arrives. Apparently, Anton sent a letter to the elders of the church, basically saying, you know, what Gustav is doing is wrong. And instead, the church gave the letter to Gustav and said, you need to go investigate this man and see if he's in league with the devil. If I were Anton, I would be sweating bullets because these guys need no excuse to kill you. So Gustav sees books on the bookshelf about black magic and vampires, and Anton explains, I'm a historian. And then he calls Gustav out and says, if you studied more, then you would know that burning doesn't actually kill a vampire, that only a stake or beheading will, and that's if they actually existed, which they don't. So you're just killing women for no reason. Gustav leaves with a warning that Anton better behave or he and his sister will pay the price. Later, Anton plays and sings the most mediocre song I've ever heard.
Thou little youthful maiden, come unto my great heart, for my heart and the sea and the heaven are melting away with love.
But his sister's very proud. She's so sweet. And then she says, why are you sending me away? And he's like, can you please, just for once, just listen and go? The twins overhear their uncle saying that everyone is now going on trial for being complicit with the devil. And Maria asks if Anton was mentioned. And her sister is like, why? Do you like him? Maria begs her to stay that night, but Frida has to go out because she knows that if she doesn't, she's probably going to bite her sister. So that night, she's in the woods when a man walks past. She walks into a cave and beckons him, and he follows, which, men, if a beautiful woman in the woods beckons you into a cave, it is not your lucky night. You did not suddenly become, like, so hot that a wood sprite is going to have crazy sex with you. You're going to die. And that's what happens. She kills him and throws him into a river. The girls are at school and Anton is teaching since his sister is gone when Gustav barges in and is followed by the Brotherhood, who's carrying the dead man on a stretcher to show Anton and the girls that vampires are real. But when they pull the sheet back, it is not a man, it is his sister, which I did not see that coming. I think I gasped. I was like, oh! That night in the woods, Frida approaches one of the Brotherhood and he says, your uncle is going to be so mad, and she bites him. The Brotherhood hears the scream and comes running. They're all holding crosses, and they all circle Frida, who's with the dead man. She drops to her knees and tries to convince them that the vampire attacked, and they're like, you got blood on your lips. And she's like, he kissed me and spit blood in my mouth and then ran away.
Uncle, save me. It was terrible. We were attacked by vampires. I only just escaped.
There is blood on your lips.
It came from a vampire. He tried to kiss me.
But Gustav pulls out a cross. Her fangs descend and she reacts. And he says, the devil has sent me twins of evil. Take her to the jail. Gustav comes home for Maria, and his wife stands in the way, and she says, punish Frida, that's fine, but Maria is good. She sleeps and she clasps the Holy Cross to her breast. And he's like, what do you mean she's sleeping? And Aunt Kathy's like, well, when we found out about Frida, she was hysterical. So I gave her, like, I don't know what they did back then, laudanum or whatever, to sleep. And she's clutching the cross to her breast. She is not a vampire. And then she calls him out for his behavior and says, what's the plan for Frida? And begs for him to find a way to save her instead of just killing her. But he says it's up to the Brotherhood, and then he leaves. Maria is talking in her sleep, and she reveals to Kathy that Frida has been going to see Count Karnstein. So Kathy leaves, probably to tell her husband. The Count then enters Maria's room, so we know they don't need invited, and he pulls the sheet down but sees the cross and reacts. Now we're with the Brotherhood, and they're saying they don't need a trial because they saw it with their own eyes. Frida is in a jail cell trying to figure a way out. Back in the bedroom, Maria is sort of like she's having a nightmare and she's tossing and turning and all this, and she flings her arm out, and Karnstein is just watching that hand. And eventually she opens her hand and the cross falls out, and he snatches her up. And then he hands her through the window down to Joachim to carry her off to places unknown. I'm like, what is happening? So I thought now that his one girl is locked up, he's just going to get a second girl. It's like, whatever, it's the same girl. I'll just take her. That's what I thought was happening. What do you think is happening? Quick, put it in the comments before I tell you. But if you've already seen it. All right. So, the Brotherhood all vote guilty, and they determine Frida is to burn now, not tomorrow, because they don't want to give the devil time to send minions to save her. The Count arrives at the jail and mesmerizes the jailer, and Joachim trades out Maria for Frida, tells Frida to pretend to be Maria so she can be used as the assumption of goodness and then wreak havoc on the village.
I knew you'd come.
You will be Maria now, unsuspected, good and kind and virginal. Think of the havoc you can cause. Quickly, we must change them. We must hurry. Your uncle and his Puritans.
I did not see that coming. They traded the girls, and then he's like, pretend to be Maria. After your sister is burned at the stake for crimes you committed, pretend to be Maria, and when everyone thinks you're like this good virginal girl, you can like cause more problems for everybody. And she's like, okay. Anton comes to the Brotherhood and says he heard what happened. He's begging them not to do this. Frida cannot be a vampire, but they're saying we saw it with our own eyes. So they all head to the jail. Kathy arrives at the meeting house, but it's too late. All the men have left. They all arrive at the jail and pull Maria from the cell. They think that the fact that she's able to sleep in the jail shows her lack of remorse and wickedness. The poor girl is drugged. Anton goes to the house to make sure Maria is okay and runs up to the bedroom to wake Maria, who's actually Frida. She acts like she's so upset about Frida, and he embraces her. Meanwhile, the men wake up Maria, and she starts to freak out. Anton pulls back and looks into the eyes of the woman in front of him, and he knows it's Frida. But then I think she kind of mesmerizes him. I'm not super sure because this is the only time we ever see this happen. He knows that's Frida, but he kind of like just freezes. The Brotherhood drags out Maria to burn her at the stake. Frida stands up, takes off all her clothes, and then Anton licks his lips and they kiss. So I'm like, hold up. Boy, you better be mesmerized because you know that's Frida from looking in her eyes. You know that Maria is about to be burned at the stake, wrongfully. She did nothing wrong, but you're going to allow that all to go down because Frida showed you her goodies. Oh my goodness gracious. But then he turns as he's got her in his arms and sees that she doesn't cast a reflection, and that must snap him out of it because he falls back, grabs the cross from off the floor that Maria dropped earlier, throws it at Frida, and flees. Frida falls back, the cross lands on her, and she's like grasping for it to get it off her breast, and grabs in her hand and then lets go, and her hand has been burned. So we know that the cross will not only repel the vampire, but will burn them. So Kathy arrives at the pyre, and she screams that Karnstein is to blame. He seduced her, but Gustav pushes Kathy away and grabs the torch. Then Anton runs up and pushes the torch from Gustav's hand and screams, "That's Maria up there. That's Maria, not Frida." The men detain him as Gustav picks the torch back up, telling Anton that the devil has a hold of him. And Anton says, "Hold up the cross to me and Maria and see that we don't flinch." And they do. And Maria stares at the cross and she begs God to please save her. So they untie Maria, and Kathy says Frida is with Count Karnstein. Now, the Brotherhood and Anton are all at the meeting house, and they're trying to decide what are they going to do, because Karnstein is protected by the courts and the emperor himself. And they are saying, like, if we kill an aristocrat, the emperor will come to this village and we will all pay. And Anton is like, you have no problem killing innocent girls on the daily, but one man, one actually evil man, this is where you're going to balk. And so he says, do you care about stopping evil, or do you care about not making the emperor mad? So Anton tells them, stop burning people. We need to stake him in the heart or behead him to give the soul peace. So now an angry mob makes its way to Karnstein Castle as Frida and the Count look from the castle down, watching the mob come. And Kathy and Maria are in the mob, which I was like, oh, I don't think Maria should be there. The Count says, don't worry, they'll just burn us and we'll live, so stop shaking.
Fire will not burn us. It will melt our bodies, but without pain. We will just laugh at them.
Joachim runs in and explains that they have crosses, stakes, and axes, and now the Count is upset. He backhands Frida in his rage, what a good guy, and then tells Joachim, you hold them off and give us time. And the vampires escape into a tunnel, but Joachim is killed off pretty fast. He's not much of a deterrent. In the tunnels, the vampires make their way to a door that opens into a foggy cemetery. And he sends her out first, and she comes up the stairs into the cemetery, and Gustav is there, and he does not think twice. He grabs her by the hair and chops her head off.
You must go first, and I'll keep watch.
The Count shuts and locks the door like the cowardly bitch that he is. Meanwhile, Maria is holding her throat and saying to her aunt, something happened to my sister. And she runs off to find her sister. Gustav tells the men to take my niece's body to the church. Anton finds Kathy and says, Frida is dead. Take Maria home. And Kathy's like, I can't. She ran off to find her sister. Now Maria's in the cemetery, and Karnstein opens the door and grabs her and pulls her into the tunnels. Anton runs up just in time to see this, but not in time to save her. The Brotherhood is in the castle, and they're looking for the Count as he drags Maria through the tunnel into the castle. Now, when he emerges, he's up on the top floor of the castle, and they are at a balcony overlooking this foyer that I think is at least 4 floors, I would say. He is holding Maria in his arms, threatening to throw her over the balcony. Gustav arrives behind the Count with an axe. So the Count drops Maria onto the floor, not onto the foyer, but onto the floor. And she sort of passes out, as girls do in this situation. Gustav swings his axe and misses the Count, but instead drives it into the wall. So he tries to flee, but the Count pulls the axe out of the wall and throws it into Gustav's back, and then throws the man over the balcony to the foyer below. Side note, the Count has huge fangs. Like huge. You would definitely feel those puppies going in. That's all I gotta say. Big fangs. Maria starts to come to when Anton throws a spear from the foyer up and gets the Count right through the chest. It goes through the Count's chest. He falls back. Anton runs up, saves Maria, and they both watch as the Count starts to disintegrate. Credits. That's it. That's the end. Yep. So that is Twins of Evil with Peter Cushing. Can I just say, when I saw Count Karnstein, I was so sure that was the same guy that played the Count in Vampire Circus, but it's not. I just feel like they could be identical. I feel like I've seen this man before, but I don't know. Maybe all dark-haired dudes in the 60s and 70s just looked exactly the same. My bad. All right, tropes I love and tropes I hate. The vampires are in the sun in this. I don't like that. They don't directly talk about it, but we clearly see Karnstein in the sun. Hate it. At least he didn't sparkle. All right. I love the blood dripping out accidentally onto the vampire, and that's what revives them. We just saw that in Dracula Has Risen from the Grave, but most famously, as I've told you, I love it in Dracula 2000, which is one of my guilty pleasures, that movie. I'm going to have to rewatch it soon. It's used in so many things. The accidentally dripping blood to resurrect the evil trope. Love it. I also love the foggy graveyards, the ancient castle, the white nightgowns, that whole aesthetic. I just love, love, love. All right, ratings. Okay. How sexy or alluring are the vampires of Twins of Evil? Like many Hammer films, these vampires are kind of horny. They're obviously very fluid sexually, but ultimately it is not sex that they want. So unlike last week, there's not going to be a bunch of groovy orgies, and they're not going to have sex with you, okay? They're going to use the sex to sort of get you weak and dumb, and then they're going to kill you, okay? Because ultimately they want your blood. So yes, they are hot, they're beautiful, but they probably won't even actually give it to you before they kill you. They don't have any kind of special allure, although the Count does have some big fangs. I mean, Frida had to show her boobs before Anton was fully in her thrall, so I don't think that she had very amazing allure or thrall or mesmerization powers. I just think she had really nice boobies. So I'm going to give them 4 out of 10 onks for sexiness and allure. Actually, I saw that the twins ended up being Playboy models. So they are like gorgeous, okay? How scary or evil are the vampires of the Twins of Evil? This man throws a woman into a crowd of witch-burning zealots, sacrifices a woman just because he's bored with being rich. He targets the twins just to piss off their uncle. He is evil, and that's before all the devil stuff. He is not bound by the sun. He has the devil on his side. He hooks up with his ancestors. He loses a point because there is a way to kill him, but it took a lot for the village to even try, and it took like basically a huge crowd of people. So I'm going to give him a very respectable 8 out of 10 stakes to the heart for scariness and evil. He was a bad guy before he was a vampire. Just not a good dude. My thoughts. What I love about this podcast is finding movies that I never probably would have watched that are actually entertaining and very, very well done. While I didn't think like the whole like only the loyal to the devil get turned into vampires. I was not a fan of that, honestly, but it is very creative. You do have to give them that. That is a creative way to explain the turn. The acting was solid. I was totally bought into the world for the whole time the movie was on. It did not lose me at one moment. This is the first movie we did this month that had actual twins in it instead of one actor playing twins. I'm trying to think. We saw it in the Radleys. That was one person playing twins. So I thought it was kind of cool that we had actual twins. Sinners, Vampu, The Vampire Happening, that was always one actor playing the relatives. So I did really enjoy that they used actual twins. I read that the mirror work was actually done with like a hole in the wall, and it was a frame around it, and then there was an identical set on each side, and it was the twins on each side. And so that's how they did the whole scene where Frida had a reflection but the Count didn't. It was because it was just the twins in the shot. So I thought that was pretty fun. Like I said, this is part of a 3-film run that centers around the Karnsteins and Carmilla, or Miracala, whatever you want to call her. So we are going to wrap it up because I'm just one of those people that likes to like have closure and symmetry. So we are going to do Lust for a Vampire next week. It is available on Prime. I checked before I even decided I was going to do it. So you guys can go watch it on Prime. Join me next week as we return to Karnstein Castle one more time. I'm sure there will be handsome counts and lots of booby biting. So join me next week. In the meantime, I love you guys. Thank you for making it to the end. Why don't you guys, if you made it all the way to the end so that I can thank you personally, why don't you in the bottom, in the comments, put, what can we do? What can we do that's appropriate for YouTube? How about the devil? If you made it to the end, I want to thank you personally. So please go and put in the comments the devil, and then just let everyone be very confused. All right, guys, my throat is not going to make it much longer. So I wish you wicked hugs and bloody kisses. Good evening.
And big finish. Thank you.